Okay, so the Gibson Custom Shop have just unveiled their brand new Murphy Lab. Let's delve in today and take a look at some of their new offerings. Alright folks, Jack here from Peach Guitars, and welcome to the introduction of Gibson Custom Shop's new Murphy Lab. Tom Murphy, for those who don't know, has been really one of the biggest names in the Gibson Custom Shop for many years. He's worked on some incredible projects with very big names in Gibson's history. Just to name a couple, I remember seeing his name alongside the likes of Ace Frehley when they did his signature 59 Les Paul, and Jimmy Page back in the day as well. Those Murphy aged guitars were always heralded in such high regard by the average customer and the artist at the very top of the Gibson roster. So he certainly knows his stuff, and what the Custom Shop have decided to do now is dedicate an entire section of their factory to the Murphy Lab. So these guitars undergo a totally separated process to everything else that the Custom Shop put out, and it's really dedicated to the art of Murphy's aging style. So what they're doing now is they've actually got a trained team of artisan designers, all trained by Tom to undergo the processes that he has developed over his time at the Custom Shop. There's a range of different finishing options available, but if you're not into relics, this is not the video for you. Gibson's VOS program is still running very strong, and I still think the VOS finish is one of the very best finishes on any electric guitar. But it's about time that we saw a little bit more love for the relicking side of things from Gibson. Tom Murphy is the guy to spearhead it, so the Murphy Lab is where all this will come together. So of the few guitars that we recently received, I've picked out 5 here that give the best kind of cross-reference of everything that the Murphy Lab is about. There's quite a range of options actually. It's not just a case of, do you want a Murphy aged guitar anymore? There's actually several different options that you can choose, which can get a little bit confusing, but bear with me, I'm going to try my best to explain it. And in the unboxing video that John did, he went into a bit of detail on this stuff as well. But as an example, okay, this here, I've got to say this is probably my favourite of the bunch that have come in on this first iteration of the Murphy Lab collection. Several of these guitars are actually made to measure. So when John and Luke, I believe, went out to the Nashville facility, they handpicked a bunch of wood tops and spec'd a bunch of Les Pauls, and that's what ended up in these guitars. So these made to measure guitars, like this one I'm holding here, this is kind of as high as you can go, if you like. This is the real deal. This is a Murphy painted guitar, hand painted by Tom Murphy. This is a heavy aged finish, so there's different finishing options available all the way from ultra light to ultra heavy. This is kind of somewhere in the middle. This is heavy aged. And I think that actually, if you consider all things a vintage Les Paul, if it had been played a lot and really loved and still looked after a little bit at the same time, this is pretty much how it would end up, I would say. At least from the examples that I've ever seen, this heavy aged finish is pretty much what I would say is pretty much vintage correct if the guitar has been played a lot. And you know, if you compare it to some other manufacturers that undergo these same processes, you find that there's a certain cut-off point where you just don't need to add any more aging to the guitar. I think the heavy aging is pretty much where that is probably most historically accurate. So that's why I really like this particular one. So the other kind of components that go into these guitars, obviously, there's certain techniques that Tom Murphy has developed to his aging style that, like I said, every single artisan within the Murphy Lab is practicing on all these guitars. So whatever kind of level of aging you go for, there's still very similar techniques and similar levels of consistency. And that's the thing that stands out to me. No longer do you see the weird kind of discrepancies between a really heavily aged body and a neck that's untouched, or hardware that's been oxidized and really beaten up, and then the rest of the guitar is kind of fairly plain. There's no longer that weird imbalance. Everything has been checked over properly. Not that the other guitars weren't, but just this is like the next level. And this is why Tom Murphy made the name for himself that he has. I think it's just all the levels of attention to detail on every single component. And it just makes for a way more convincing and, I think, inviting guitar experience when you can barely tell that anything is apart on this guitar. This just looks like one solid piece of machinery, and I really like that. So I just want to try and break down what the different aging levels and finishing options are within the Murphy Lab. It's a little bit convoluted and confusing, but it does make sense once you understand it. So what they try and do in the Murphy Lab is take great steps to make sure that the guitars look as historically accurate as possible. For example, if you go for a heavier aged finish, that would naturally correlate to guitars that have similarly aged colouring. So there's certain colour choices available for certain levels of aging. A light aged guitar is going to afford you some of the more vibrant colours that haven't weathered and aged. But the heavier aged guitars, like this one, will offer you some more of the aged colour choices as well. So everything kind of matches up. That's historically accurate, that's what most people would assume, and that's what most people want out of their Gibson Custom Shop guitars. When you get up to the made-to-measure series, that's when things get a little bit more specific and you can choose any option you like. This guitar being a made-to-measure, for example, it's got the heavy aging with a fairly aged finish, but you could choose whatever you want. If you wanted a bright red tomato burst with a heavy aged guitar, you can do that with the made-to-measure series. But in the standard Murphy collection, they kind of try and keep things a little bit closely tied to the level of aging, to the level of finish, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So, all those other factors aside, I've got to say that this example, this Iced Tea guitar that I'm holding, I think it's Iced Tea, this is just one of the best looking Les Pauls I've ever seen. It's got the heavy aging treatment with a nice aged finish. Aged hardware, everything is just dead on if you want that worn in feel and appearance. And that's the difference. If you don't want that, the VOS options are available. They always have been and they always will be. But there are people out there that do want this sensation. And I talked about it before when I had one of the last Murphy aged guitar that we had in. I remember talking about that. It was just such a fantastic instrument from top to bottom, and everything had been very carefully considered, and it all contributes to the final product, which is the tone of the guitar as well. The whole playing experience impacts that tone. So you can be scientific about it and say that the relicking and the aging doesn't make a difference to the tone if you played exactly the same thing side by side on two different guitars. But actually, when you just take this thing, put it in the right context, it will inform your playing in a different way. You're either going to like that or you're not. If you don't like the look of this thing, it's still hard to deny that playing it will give you a different experience to a non-relict guitar, at least in my opinion. So I said I picked these 5 guitars to kind of give a nice indication of everything that the Murphy Lab offers in terms of the different age levels and stuff like that. So what you're seeing here are 2 semi-hollows and 2 more Les Pauls, all with different finishing options. So for example, the Cherry 335 has the heavy aging, which I think looks amazing on that guitar. It's got this really cool, there's a couple of sections on it where it's burned down to the undercoat, and it's got this cool like sort of pinkish hue to it, which you just don't see on Gibsons usually, so it's nice to have that option. The 355 behind it, however, is just the light aging. So if you want a more, once again, historically correct, sort of untouched, a little bit better looked after, perhaps historically looking guitar, you've got that option too, with still the correct level of aging if you want it to look like it's actually from that period. Same thing with the Les Pauls here. Now this 1960 guitar at the front, this Tomato Burst, which looks amazing, is part of the Murphy collection. It's not a made-to-measure guitar, but it's still part of the Murphy collection. That's got the ultra-light aging, so a little bit more subdued, a little bit more kind of closer to the VOS treatment, but it's still got the Murphy feel to it. Still feels worn in, which is nice. And then good news, there is a left-handed option as well. That's a light-aged, really, really nice looking top. So there's a whole wealth of different options. Whatever you want from your Gibson Custom Shop guitar, it is possible within the Murphy Lab. It's just down to you to choose what level of aging you'd like. Okay, so what does this all mean, really? I think that the Murphy Lab is going to push a new lease of life onto the idea of slightly aged and heavily aged Gibson guitars, which we just haven't seen for a while. They'd always previously been just reserved for those super high-end, hand-finished Tom Murphy guitars like this one, the Murphy painted guitar, and you know, it kind of did put them in a more exclusive bracket. And it's just nice to see more options available now. You know, whether you like them or not, whether you're interaging or not, and if you are or you aren't, let us know in the comments. Either way, whichever way you stand on it, it's just good to have options. I'm sure we can agree on that. So, whether your choice is for a squeaky clean guitar or a VOS guitar or an ultra heavy aged guitar, it's just further proof once again that Gibson is back on great form, and this Murphy Lab is pretty exciting if you, like me and the rest of us here at Peach Guitars, are just big fans of old Gibsons. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this brief introduction to the Murphy Lab series. Hopefully you'll be seeing many, many more of these very cool guitars featured here on the channel very soon. And if you'd like to find out any more information about any of these particular guitars, or the Murphy Lab series in general, or indeed any other Gibson products that we have here at the shop, click the link in the description below to do so. So if you've enjoyed this video, as always, please remember to leave us a like down below, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Let us know a few of your thoughts in the comments. Let me know whether you're a fan of relicking or you're not, and if you think these Murphy Lab guitars hold up to the real deal, the real vintage classics. Anyway, folks, take good care of yourselves, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Cheers.